going to look at population, and it is an area that we said that we're going to cover over the holidays. It is my expectation that we have been able to check all the other areas, especially the assignment questions, so that it becomes easy for us. The topic on population mostly deals with the number of humans, the number of people within a given area, and therefore it is something that we must have interacted with it in some other topics as we started, and therefore today we are going to start with definitions of terms, and some of those terms we are going to make use of them as we continue with the lesson. We will start with the definition of what is human population. And human population is defined as the number of people occupying or living in a given area. That is what we call human population. For example, how many people are living within a specific geographical location? That is what we call human population. We will also be able to define the term demography, and this is the statistical data on human population. That is what we call demography. If you look on my left, you can see that demography tries to show us the population. Let us look at the sources of population data. Where do we extract the data that we get about population? One is we have primary sources and secondary sources of data, and under these sources we say that we have registrar of persons as one of the primary sources. When a child is born, she's registered, she's given a birth certificate. That is an evidence that she has been registered. When a person gets married, she's given a marriage certificate. That is an indication that that marriage has been registered. There is also death certificate and all that. So that one is usually found on the registrar of persons. We have sample surveys. The government can decide to come up with a sample of they can decide to sample a given area to be able to determine the population dynamics of that given area. So that is an example of a sample survey. The government can also decide to do what is called a national census. I think some of us have been able to experience an example of a census. For example, I think in 2019 we had a national census, and that national census was able to cover the whole country. Our country, Kenya, is able to usually carries out census every 10 years. So within every 10 years they are able to carry out the census to be able to determine population growth in a country, whether we have experienced positive population growth, negative population growth. We are able to see have the lives of people improved, all those things. Another source of primary data is what is called the content analysis, where we can decide to extract data from secondary sources. Is also another example of what we call primary source of data. Secondary sources of population data. We have statistical abstracts, textbooks, magazines. There is journal on population and periodicals on population, national census reports, and of course the internet. It becomes a very important source of population data. What is a census? This is the physical counting of people that are living in each household. when a census is carried out, they try to count people in each and every household. What do they try to determine? When you look at that infograph, you can find that they tend to determine the sex, how many males, how many females are within that uh, home or that house, what is their race, what is their birthplace. We also look at the social characteristics, the marital status, how many married people are in that house, how many single people are in that house, what is their level of education, what is the nature of the houses, the housing, what is their levels of education, what is their religious background or religious beliefs, all those ones. For example, are they Muslims, are they Christians, and all that. They also try to uh, determine the economic characteristics of the residents of that house. For example, they will look at what is the occupation. For example, are you a teacher? Are you a doctor? Are you a nurse? They also try to estimate what is the income that the members of that household are getting, and of course, what is the language that they speak. All those ones are some of the characteristics that the census is able to gather whenever it is being carried out. And that information that is gathered is very important because it helps the country in planning and coming up with the various plans. They are able to know if, for example, we are very many young people, it means that we now focus on assigning more resources to health and education and such stuff. Factors that influence the distribution of population in East Africa. There are a number of factors. We have physical factors, we have human factors, of course we also have economic factors. This question was there in 2008, so the probability of getting the same question is also very high. East Africa has different climates, and those different climates will influence how population is distributed. For example, in places that receive high rainfall, especially areas around the highlands, you find that they are densely populated because those places provide suitable conditions for farming, and that one attracts population. In places that are arid, the hot and dry areas have sparse population because the conditions provided by climate in that area make it unsuitable for farming, and therefore doesn't attract population. Another factor is relief. Relief mostly is going to influence a lot on population. For example, if the area is rugged and mountainous, it discourages establishment of settlement. It also discourages agriculture. It makes it difficult and expensive to construct roads. That means the area doesn't attract a lot of population, so it is densely settled. Gently sloping areas are densely settled because it is easier to construct housing units, it is easier to construct roads, they provide suitable conditions for farming because of the gently sloping landscapes, and therefore they encourage, or those places are densely settled. Places that are flat are sparsely populated. One of the reasons is because, of course, there is poor drainage, and because of that, it causes a lot of flooding. An example is the lower sections of River Tana, the lower sections of River Yala, Nyando, all those places. Of course, they are poorly drained, and they do not attract population. Edaphic factor or soils is also another factor. The various types of soils have an influence on farming. For example, deep, well-drained volcanic soils are very important, and they're mostly found in the highlands, the Kenyan highlands, Telgon. And because of that, those ones, they attract a lot of population. They are densely populated because those soils support arable farming. Drainage is also another factor that influences population distribution in East Africa. It determines where population is going to settle. For example, low-lying areas are prone to flooding, and therefore they are unsuitable for agriculture. And therefore, those places are sparsely populated. Well-drained areas, the gently sloping areas, are suitable for agriculture, and therefore they are densely settled. People will also tend to avoid places that are infested with pests and diseases. For example, places that have tsetse flies, places that have very major cases of malaria. Those disease-causing vectors, they tend to discourage settlements. That is why places like Miombo woodland in Tanzania, they are sparsely settled because of course, the cases of tsetse flies. Same case with the Lambwe Valley in the 1970s. It was sparsely settled because of the same problem. Vegetation, of course, influences distribution. It's also another factor. Places that are forested and savanna and woodland areas, those ones, they are places that attract wild animals, and in most of those places we have national parks and game reserves, and therefore some of those places are considered as gazetted areas, of course, because of the nature of vegetation that is found there that is suitable for wild animals. Human factors, we will look at a number of human factors. One of the human factors we're going to look at is the historical factor. The places that have been exposed to slave trade have left some of those areas with extremely low population, especially those places that experienced very high cases of slavery. Those places are considered to have never recovered from the effects of slave trade up to now. People also tend to settle in places that are relatively secure. So most of the secure places are densely populated. Places that have cases of insecurity, like North Rift, like Northeastern, some of those areas. Places that have cases of cattle rustling, places like the North Rift, Ukoside, Zabaringo, some of those areas, they are densely populated because people tend to avoid areas which have conflicts, whether they are tribal conflicts, whether they are civil wars, whether they are the issues to do with cattle rustling, any form of insecurity. People tend to avoid some of those areas. So security becomes a factor that influences population distribution in East Africa. Another human factor is urbanization, and one of them is in case that we have a town that has grown, people tend to migrate towards that town in search of jobs. And when they migrate into such a town, it causes an increase in population in such an area. And where they come from, there is a decline in population, especially in the rural areas. So that is how urbanization influences population distribution. That's why you will find that a town like Nairobi has 4 million people, and it's only a very small area within the country. So the population density in Nairobi is extremely high, of course, because of urbanization. Government can also come up with a policy that can have an influence on population distribution. For example, if a government decides to create a settlement scheme, where that settlement scheme has been established, then that place experiences dense population. And where they come from, there is a reduction in population. So that one, of course, is another factor that tends to affect the population distribution within East Africa. Another factor is economic factors. People tend to migrate from the rural areas to the urban centers because they are going to look for employment. And that one means that in the urban areas, population increases, and in the rural areas, they experience low population, because in the rural areas, we are going to have children, women, and the elderly. The able-bodied, the strong, young, energetic people usually move to the urban areas. Number two, in areas where industries are located, there is dense population. Of course, people are looking for jobs. They also provide services to those industries, and therefore those places, they experience a dense population. That's why areas around industrial area in Nairobi, you find there is dense settlements. Most of them, we call them informal settlements, because most of them are working in the neighboring industries. Places that are well served with a good transport network, they also attract dense population as compared to areas that have sparse population. And lastly, we have mining areas like, let's give an example of something like Magadi town. Magadi town is located around 130 kilometers from Nairobi. It is an extremely remote area, but in Magadi town, it has dense population. Reason is because of the presence of soda ash mining, and because of that, you find that many people are going there to look for jobs, and then other, of course, auxiliary services come in, trade comes in, and all that. So that one has an influence on the population distribution on that area. We look at another term that we call population growth. It is the change that occurs in the number of people in an area of a given population period of time. For example, in a country like Kenya, we can have refugees coming to our country, and when they come, there is an increase in the number of people in our country over that period of time. Or we may experience an exponential growth. Maybe the birth rates have increased. So once we experience that, an increase in the number of people in a given place, then we have what is called positive population growth. Negative population growth is where we have the decrease in the number of people in an area over a given period of time. For example, if there is war and people die, then the people over that area, or that area, experiences what we call negative population growth. It can also be caused by something like migration, maybe rural to urban migration. It can cause negative population growth within an area of a given period of time. There are three factors that influence population growth. One, we have fertility, we have mortality, we have migration. And in our case today, we are going to look at one, and that is fertility. The other two, we are going to look at them in the next lesson that is slated for tomorrow. Under fertility, we are going to look at a number of terms, and we're also going to start with fertility. Fertility is the ability to conceive or produce children. Ability to conceive or produce children. Fecundity is the ability to give birth to many children, is what we call fecundity. Is the ability to give birth to many children. Infertility is the inability to conceive or produce children. This is whereby you are totally not able to have children. Infecundity is a state where the person is unable to give birth to many children. In a case where we can say probably due to health issues, maybe the issues of rhesus factor. Maybe those who do biology are able to know what is a rhesus factor. So that inability to give birth to many children, maybe you have one child, you are unable to have two or more. That is what you are calling infecundity. Fertility rate is the number of live births in a given population in a year. The number of live births, how many children that are born alive within a year. That is what we call fertility rates. The number of live births in a year in a given population is what we are calling fertility rate. So when we say high fertility rates, it means that there is increased population growth. The number of live births within a given year has increased, is what we call high fertility rate. And when that slows down, then we have what is called a low fertility rate. So the number of children that are being born within a year, when it declines, then we have what is called a low fertility rate. Causes of high fertility rates or high positive population growth, there are a number of factors, and one of them we are going to look at the cultural beliefs. One, there is sex preference. There are some communities that have high regard for male child or male children, and therefore the woman will continue giving birth until she is able to get a son. The second cultural belief is polygamy, where a person has more than one wife and each of those women has to give birth to many children. So that one causes a high population growth or leads to high fertility rates. We have also cases where we have early marriages. Somebody is married off at a very young age, maybe ages of 13, 15, and so this person has a longer childbearing span, and because of that means that this person is active from maybe 15 to around 50 years. So that period she has the capacity to have more children. That one considers or means that the high birth rate or high fertility rate is high. We also have communities that name relatives and they alternate from the man side to the woman side. And so in an effort to name all your relatives, you end up having so many children. There are also those communities that also believe in large families as a source of prestige. You have so many children, kuna watoto wengi sana, and so as a result of that, it becomes a source of prestige. And especially where you have so many young children, so many girls, they become a source of bride wealth. So that belief in large families will end up causing high population growth. Especially in most of the African communities, you will find that there are those that love large families. Some cultures discourage the use of contraceptives, and that one means that we do not have any major or any form of family planning method. That means that most of these couples will end up having so many children. That one contributes to high population growth. Let's look at economic factors. Sometimes economic factors can cause or can lead to an increase in population. Why? Because you want to have a large family, and that large family can work maybe in the farms. They can assist in herding, especially in the pastoralist communities. That's an economic factor. Number two, you also want security in old age. You have so many children, so that they will be able to take care of you when you are old. It is a form of security, it's a form of an insurance. So that one contributes to a high population growth rate. Number three, because number C is where we have most people are ignorant. They totally do not know about how to plan for families, or they use the traditional family planning methods, and that one is of course not effective. And that one means that if there is a spike in the number of children that are born. Improved medical facilities can also increase population growth. Why? Because we have more people seeing the 5th birthday. We do not have high cases of infant mortality because there is improved medical care. We have doctors that are trained, we have midwives. So all those mistakes that happen during birth are no longer happening because there is improved medical care. That one reduces the number of children dying when they are born. Children are also able to reach the age of 5 because there is improved nutrition. Those sicknesses that are usually brought because of problems of lack of nutrition are no longer there because there is improved nutrition. That lowers the mortality rate. Modernization can also bring about high birth rates. Why? For example, these days we have girls freely interacting. There is a breakdown in social values. Therefore, girls and men, they do not usually see any problem as they interact with each other. And in the process of the interactions, you'll find that some will just have children out of wedlock. You'll find there are very many that are born that are not planned. So because of that, it can cause a spike in birth rates. And lastly, of course, we have what is called migration. And Kenya is a very good example that has experienced very high population growth rates because of the influx of refugees into Kenya. Because those countries are totally insecure. So when they come to our country, they experience some relative safety. What causes slow population growth? One, hard economic times, where today you can only bring up children that you can only be able to take care of, because we are experiencing very hard economic times. So if you have 10 children, how will you bring them up? Because the economic times are very hard. So you find that most people are adopting 2-3 children that you can only be able to take care of. Today, families have adopted the family planning methods, where women have been able to, and men have been able to come up with they have agreed on the family planning method that they are going to use, so that they can lower the number of children that they are going to have, so that they can be able to effectively take care of them. Number 3, we have career women, or basically careers. That one has an effect. It limits you on the number of children that you cannot be able to take care of. For example, you cannot have 5 children, and you are also having a career that you are having. It takes a toll on you being able to balance between them and your career. We also have today, we have most people are opting to remain single. They do what is called voluntary celibacy. They just decide that I am not going to have children. So that one lowers population growth rate. There is delay marriage, especially among the girls, and this one is because most of them are spending very many years in school. A very good example is where we have uh, by the time you are 18 years, you're in Form 4. Then you spend another 4 years in the university. That's around 22. Then probably you opt to go for further studies, you spend another 3 years. So by the time you are getting into families, you find that much of your time has been spent in school, and therefore the little time that you are active, you are capable to the span that you have for having children is limited, and that one slows population growth. People to these days are also adopting the modern lifestyles, and modern